How difficult are the jobs at 345 Park Avenue, considering they're too lazy to fix the officiating functions? I've always said the job of NFL commissioner isn't that hard, considering the money keeps rolling in regardless, and it would be much better if they didn't regularly step on rakes, to use one of my favorite metaphors. And I think of Sideshow Bob from The Simpsons, where he somehow ends up with a whole bunch of rakes, and he steps on one after another. Okay. This dovetails from a point that I made on PFT Live about the NFL's refusal to tear the officiating function down and start over. Number one, they're cheap. Number two, they're lazy. They don't want to take the time to do it. Number three, they're concerned about unintended consequences. They think they're going to screw it up. So let's just keep it the way it is, because we could actually make it worse, like we did in 2019 when we came up with replay review for pass interference calls and non-calls, and it was a debacle. We did that. Let's not do that again. Let's choose doing nothing. The devil we know over the devil we don't know. So, look, here's the bottom line. A lot of people don't want to work harder than they have to. You're getting paid well. You're doing your job. Nobody's complaining. Path of least resistance. Doesn't matter. Too much work, too much effort. We're fine. We're fine. Everything's fine. This is fine. That's the game they're playing. That's the risk they're taking with the sport we all love. The people who are the stewards of the sport, they're not going to be there forever. I really do believe that their attitude is, yeah, you know what? There may be a big scandal because of the whole gambling thing. There may be a Tim Donaghy thing. There may be something else we're not thinking of. That'll be for the next person to worry about. We're not going to worry about that. You know what we're going to worry about? How much money we're making right now. And we're making as much of it as we can. And we're not spending it on things we don't need to spend it on. Because who really cares? Who really cares if we get some calls wrong? Who really cares if we make some mistakes? Who really cares? What's our return on that investment? How much do we make? Do we make any more money at all by spending the money necessary to completely revamp the officiating function? No. But what they need to be concerned about is how much money it's going to cost when the shit finally hits the fan. When there is a scandal that gets the league sued, that gets people prosecuted, that gets Congress to set up an agency that will have regulatory authority over the NFL. That's what they need to be concerned about. And that's going to complicate our lives as fans, members of the media. We're the ones who are going to have to figure all this out and cover that while we still cover what's happening in the NFL. I don't want that. I don't want something to undermine the status of the NFL, to cause it to diminish, to cause fans to say, this is fake, this is phony, this is rigged, I'm doing something else. And that's what they have to worry about. There's an arrogance to all of this. No one's going to quit watching. What else are they going to watch? Baseball? And that's how you get yourself into a potential problem. Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. And the NFL right now is being very hoggy about the money it's making and the unwillingness to use that money to make the game better and to protect the sport against the threat of a major gambling scandal that will hurt the sport in ways that it may never recover from. And as somebody who loves pro football, who's been following the sport for 50 years now, this is my 50-year anniversary of really being an adamant, constant, I was 8 years old, fan of the NFL. I don't want that to happen. And this isn't my financial interest talking. This is, pro football has been a big part of my life, especially in the fall. That Sunday ritual, looking forward to the next games. You put a lot of mental energy into that. You put a lot of heart and soul into that. You feel better if your favorite team wins the next day. You feel bad if it doesn't. You look forward to the games. Those 3 hours are magical. You get a complete break from everything that's going on in your life, everything that's going on in the world. You get swept up. You don't want those games to be diminished. You don't want those games to be undermined. You don't want the sport to be less than it is, all because the people who are in charge of it now aren't willing to spend the money, aren't able to spend the time, and aren't confident that they can come up with a way to make things better without making things worse. PFT, PM Posse, why aren't the Cowboys involved in some of the bigger trade talks, especially since most trades require relatively little in return to acquire a good player? Do other teams not like doing business with the boys and or the Jones family? I don't think that's it. Shireen Williams nailed it today on PFT Live. Jerry Jones is in this, we're not going to make any false moves here. We're not going to initiate any talks because they gave up too much for Trey Lance. And they know it. And everybody else knows it. So once bitten, twice shy is the Cowboys' approach to the trade deadline. And that's a shame because maybe they could do a deal that would help them. And there's a way to do it where you don't hurt your leverage. I wrote about this yesterday. Call every team. Check in with every team. We're just seeing who you may have. I'm not saying we're going to do anything. We're just curious. We're curious. It's like going from store to store. You're shopping. What do they got for sale here? What do they got for sale there? What do they got for sale here? You know what? I'm not going to buy anything. I'm just looking. But you got to browse before you can even get to the point where you can have a conversation. This assumption that if I pick up the phone and call, I'm going to put myself in a bad spot, it just seems weird. It does. There are plenty of win-win deals that are done. But back to Shireen's point, it doesn't feel like a win-win to give up a fourth-round pick and take on the full contractual duty to pay Trey Lance this year and next year. 49ers had to pay nothing. If the 49ers would have cut him, they'd have been on the hook for everything, minus the minimum salary they would have gotten somewhere else. They were thrilled to unload the financial obligation and get a fourth-round pick. Thrilled. And the Cowboys weren't. And that's why Jerry Jones is being very careful about any deals at the deadline, even though they could make the team better if they could work something out. Ravi Buffalo, thanks for the Wednesday podcast. How much should Sean McDermott be blamed for the offense issues in Buffalo? Has he meddled, over-influenced Ken Dorsey? Isn't it the same friction that occurred with Brian Daboll? Well, whatever happened with Brian Daboll, it worked. They did well. This gets back to my fundamental belief that in today's NFL, pass-happy, great quarterbacks, you need an offensive head coach. All due respect to the great defensive head coaches out there, plenty of them in the Hall of Fame. Bill Belichick, defensive guy who really did morph into both sides of the ball. You need an offensive coach because if you have a defensive coach and you get a great quarterback and things go well, it's bye-bye offensive coordinator. Now I got to find a new one. So Brian Daboll becomes head coach of the Giants. Ken Dorsey steps into that job. And maybe he's not good. We don't know. It's still early. That's the problem. This is something my son and I talk about, and I've mentioned this before. You got 17 regular season games last year, the playoffs last year, 7 games this year. Is it really enough time to get to the point where you've learned the job, where you've settled into the job? Some people can do it right away. Some people take time. And Dorsey, for whatever reason, too reliant on Josh Allen. There's no effort to establish a running game. Something Chris Sims has been saying recently is go with a short passing game instead of a running game. Just something to draw the defense up a little bit so you can exploit it over the top. They spend too much time trying to use Josh Allen in a way that results in a spectacular play. And when it works, they blow the other team out. When it doesn't work, they get frustrated. They keep pressing. They keep trying too hard. People get frustrated and they lose. 4-3 is inexcusable for this team, for that quarterback, for the skill they have. 4-3, no. They are in danger of not winning the division. They may even be in danger of not making the playoffs if they don't turn this around. And they got a short week. Thursday night, we'll see what they can do against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Neil watches PFT. Have there been any NFL phenomena quite like the Taylor Swift phenomenon? Closest I can think of was Tony Romo Simpson Underwood. Was it Romo and Jessica Simpson? Was Carrie Underwood involved in that? I don't remember. I just remember Tony Romo going to Cabo, and that was during the bye week, 2007 playoffs. They got beat at home by the Giants, and Terrell Owens did the passive-aggressive sniff. That's my quarterback. Don't pick on my quarterback. That's my teammate. That's my quarterback. And his point was, go ahead and do it, please. This Taylor Swift thing is huge because for the first time ever, since the NFL has become the biggest thing around, the NFL has found something even bigger to latch onto. Usually the NFL is the shark with what are those fish called? The fish that like are the parasite fish around the shark. Now the NFL is the parasite fish around the shark. That is the whole Taylor Swift thing. So it's never done this before. It's never seen this before. And it's doing what it should do. It's grabbing the tiger by the tail and holding on for as much of the ride as it can. And Sims and I talked about this the other day. If you're bothered by cutaways of Taylor Swift, I mean, they always cut away. They always cut away to the crowd. They show the sad fan face, somebody you don't even know. They can either show somebody celebrating that you don't know or somebody sad that you don't know. Or they can cut away to Taylor Swift, whose presence at these games has caused more people to watch football. Don't you want that as a football fan? Don't you want more people to enjoy it? Don't you want it to be more successful and thrive more, be more of an event, more people to talk to about it, more people who care about it? It just feels bigger the more people that are following it. So the only counter to that, somebody raised this point with me. Some of the folks that go to the games and they get all dressed up and they've got the sign, that's their moment. That's their chance. You know, if Taylor Swift was at the Cowboys-Chargers game, we might not have seen the Chargers superfan who somehow ended up at Arrowhead Stadium wearing a Buffalo Wild Wings hat. But that's the balance. It doesn't affect the game. The cutaways are part of the game. I don't know why it bothers people. It shouldn't. Because the NFL understands from the standpoint of its business, this is something to latch onto. Now, there is a line, and I've said this before, with that perception a few weeks back that a lot of calls were going Kansas City's way. The NFL, as a league office, can never be perceived as being anything other than impartial. And if you're too into the whole Taylor Swift thing, maybe you're too into the Chiefs. You want the Chiefs to go farther. Not that they would have, struggled this year to make the playoffs, but you got to be careful about the perception that you're playing favorites, because a lot of people are watching and waiting to be able to say, aha, we caught you playing favorites. Tom Rivers, do you think the Browns made a mistake signing Deshaun Watson, and do you think they have buyer's remorse? Yes. Yes. At this point, yes. They paid him $46 million last year, minus whatever. And they gave him the signing bonus. His salary was low, so it's not like they saved much during the 11-game suspension. Then this year, it's another $46 million. And what's he really done to earn that money? And they're on the hook for 3 more years. So yeah, I think they have remorse. They'll never admit it, but they have remorse. And there's something weird going on here. And the point I made today on PFT Live, I would always be leery about trading for a guy who has decided he hates the team that he previously worked for. Because whatever happened, however it happened, whatever got him to that point, mentally, that may happen at some point when he's working for you. And with Watson and the Texans, it happens so damn fast. He signs a contract extension Labor Day weekend 2020. By the end of the season, he's done with the Texans and he wants out. And whatever the reason, whatever the explanation, he may have great reasons for it. Well, maybe he'll find great reasons for it when he's working for you. And there's just something weird about all of this. I'm not ready to sign on to the idea that he's treating this as a trust fund, that he doesn't have to play, that he's guaranteed to make all this money. This is a guy who played with a torn ACL. This is a guy who took the bus from Houston to Jacksonville and back again so he could play because his rib and lung injury kept him from flying. This is a guy who wants to play, but something weird is going on. And it all goes back to that Ravens game when he was saying all week long, I'm going to play, I'm going to play, I'm going to play, and he didn't play. The aftermath of that, the comment from Kevin Stefanski, the head coach of the team, that Deshaun was medically cleared. At some point, somebody's going to have this story on this about what really happened. And I think for now, everybody is being as careful as they can be. But behind the scenes, we wrote an item a few weeks back after Deshaun Watson had multiple infractions in the Week 2 Monday night game against the Steelers, the very aggressive face masks, the very egregious and blatant face mask fouls, the shoving away of the official who was pushing him away from a Steelers player, and there was nothing for that, no punishment at all, which is just weird. If he gets suspended by the league or the team, they could say all those guarantees are gone. And if they have any reason to think that he's not playing by his own choice and they're papering the file and building a case, who knows where this is going to go. But I said earlier today on PFT Live, I think around week 15, there's going to be a Sunday Splash report that sheds some light on whatever has been going on, because we can just tell by looking at it, something is wrong here. Something is weird, because no one's coming out to say everything's fine. It's just a misunderstanding. Here we are. We're arm in arm. Everybody loves each other. We're sorry that it got weird, but there's nothing weird. Everything's great. Nobody's doing that. It's just festering. Whatever it is that's wrong between the Browns and Watson is just kind of there, and it's getting worse, and it's getting weirder, and we'll just see how it all plays out. Mike Rifkin. Was the Kevin Byard trade just the start of the Titans starting a rebuild? If that's the case, what's the future hold for Mike Vrabel? I've already mentioned that I believe that maybe some of these other players who won't be part of the future are in play. I think Vrabel's safe. I think this whole thing is a product of, all right, we made some bad decisions when John Robinson was the GM. Rand Carthon is the new GM. Mike Vrabel is a great coach. We are consciously deciding not to prioritize winning for the balance of the season as it relates to what we can get for the guys we have. Now, Vrabel will still prioritize winning with the guys he has, but the organization willing to part with some players that aren't going to be part of the future, understanding you get extra draft picks, and if your team struggles to win, you get better draft position with the picks already assigned to you. RB Roughnecks, how does the NFL transparently show there's no funny business in regards to having an official betting partner? CC Tim Donaghy. I firmly believe there will be a gigantic scandal in the next decade in regards to gambling with one of the major sports leagues. I do too. Look, the NFL acts like it had to do the money grab. When the commissioner was interviewed by Mike Tirico in Kansas City, week 1, there was a question about the NFL's position on gambling. And Goodell said something along the lines of, the Supreme Court decision from 2018 required us to be in this space. No, it didn't. The NFL was still allowed to hate gambling and shun gambling and have nothing to do with gambling. It just went from being illegal to legal in most jurisdictions. The NFL could still say, we're having nothing to do with it. We're not going to have any gambling partnerships. We're not going to do anything to make it easier for gambling. We hate gambling. We're not going to put a team in Las Vegas. We're not going to put a Super Bowl in Las Vegas. They decided, you know what? There's a hell of a lot of money to be made, and if we don't make it, someone else will. And so they set principle aside, and they made the money grab. And now the problem is there's too many areas where it's hard to reconcile the money grab with the effort to preserve the integrity of the game. And it's not just the integrity of the game. It's the integrity of the wagers on the game. There's a different prong here to integrity of the game. Integrity of the game, i.e., outcome, winner, loser. Integrity of the wager, i.e., Bijan Robinson not playing much on Sunday. Falcons concealing that he was sick. You undermine the integrity of the wager on the game by not insisting that that information be made available to the people who are betting on the game. The spread in any given game is part of the integrity of the wager. Winner, loser, fine. But apply the spread. Apply the point over under. All the different things you can bet on. The NFL needs to be concerned about the integrity of the wagers and the integrity of the game. And I don't think they've gotten to that point yet. That's why I think the scandal is inevitable. And that's why I think what the NFL is just doing now is make as much money as you can, make as much money as you can, make as much money as you can, and worry about the consequences later. As the great Daffy Duck once said, consequences, schmonsequences, as long as I'm rich. Maybe that should be the NFL's new motto. Forget about football as family. Forget about football is business, but we say football is family because it's good for business. Consequences, schmonsequences, as long as I'm rich. That's the new motto for the National Football League. Jason Foltz, does the NFL secretly enjoy the attention from bad calls? Why worry about length of games when eyeballs won't go away, even if it's a bad game and it's close? Are referees held to some kind of non-betting standard since they aren't full-time employees? All right, I'm going to focus on the early questions here. Jeff Fisher, when he was coach of the Rams and chair of the competition committee, he was on PFT Live, and we were talking about replay review or whatever. And he said, and I think he was tongue-in-cheek, but also not fully. Basically, these controversies give you something to talk about. And the NFL's position, at some level, any attention is good attention. But when you've got legalized wagering, that's when it changes. I think back to November of 2008. I think I have a chapter about this in Playmakers. There was a game between the Chargers and the Steelers. The Steelers won, but they didn't cover. And there was an interception late in the game. Troy Polamalu returned it for a touchdown. The official, I think it was Scott Green, ruled that it wasn't a touchdown. And then they admitted it was a touchdown, but it was too late to do anything about it. And millions of dollars swung on the failure of the Steelers to cover. And that was when it was all illegal, except in Las Vegas and the rest of Nevada. Now that it's legal in most of the country, something like that happens. It's not just fodder for talk shows. See, I just don't think they've fully grasped the potential consequences, or they don't care to try. They just want to stuff their pockets with all the money that they can. And someone else will get to clean up the mess when there's a scandal involving an official, a quarterback, a coach, somebody misusing inside information. What if the rest of the story for Bijan Robinson is that some people knew he wasn't going to play much, and they went heavy on the under, on his over-under prop bets of yardage, catches, receiving yardage, touchdowns? It's just a matter of time before somebody misuses inside information in a way that causes a lot of money to change hands, and the sports books aren't going to like that at all. David Mitchell, Sam Howell's on track to shatter the sack record, the likelihood that he becomes shell-shocked like David Carr. I'm more worried about him not making it through the season. People are talking about the Commanders trading Jacoby Brissett to the Browns. You need to have a backup there for Sam Howell. The way he's getting hit, at some point he's going to get hurt. So I'm more concerned about him getting through the season than what his psyche is going to be moving forward. But what happens when you get sacked a lot? This was a point Chris Sims made late in Eli Manning's career. The clock in your head gets too screwed up. You think you have less time than you have because you're so used to the walls closing in that you get to the point where you're making decisions faster than you needed to because the walls aren't closing in. But you're so used to it, you're just getting rid of the ball, making bad throws, making bad decisions because you think you have less time than you really do. Amused to death. Monday, you were ready to become an Eagles fan. Tuesday, it was all Kirk Cousins and Vikings love. What happened that you flipped so easily? Eagles even sent you the gorgeous hoodie Sirianni was wearing. The hoodie hasn't shown up yet. I think the truck pulled up a little while ago. I heard it out there. It's supposed to come by today at 5. One for me and one for Sims. Look, I thought the Vikings were going to get the crap beat out of them on Monday night. I didn't expect it. I've been following this team for 50 years, folks. I know how these movies end. The Vikings have struggled in recent years against elite teams. They have not beaten a great team since maybe the Eagles regular season 2018. Remember, it was a late afternoon game. Eagles were down 14. Doug Peterson did the score a touchdown, go for two thing. And that was kind of at the time when people were starting to understand the whole analytics argument behind being down 14, score a touchdown, go for two, even though most people who broadcast college and NFL games still haven't gotten the memo that there's an analytics-based reason for going for two. And if you get it, then you win the game with 7 and you avoid overtime altogether. And if you don't, you just try again and go for 2 and go for the tie. Anyway, I remember that happening in that game. That, to me, was the last significant regular season win for the Vikings. Kirk Cousins has not had many great performances in prime time. This was a great performance in prime time against an elite team. And now you look at their schedule, and it opens up. There's a lot of games that they can win. They got the Packers. Falcons, that won't be easy, but it's easier than the 49ers. They got the Saints. They've got the Bears again. They got the Packers again. They've got the Raiders. All the way until week 15, they're winnable games for the Vikings. So, my son's very happy about it. It was kind of nice to have a 3-hour period where it actually went well, even though, I was conflicted because I still want to be right. And I picked the 49ers to win and cover, and I wanted to be right. So it was a good night. And it's interesting to see the Vikings, after being left for dead, pulling their way back into it. And there's actually an argument to be made that a team that was regarded as potential sellers at the trade deadline maybe should think about becoming buyers. They get a big win at Lambeau Field. Who knows what they'll do before 4 p.m. Eastern next Tuesday. Curtis Allen, when you posted your review of the Geno Smith contract on March 7, you alluded to the 2024 salary has offsets if the Seahawks move on. Can you confirm that the contract does indeed have salary offsets? That's not in his contract. His contract is very simple. They can get out of this thing after 1 year. I'm looking at it now. I'm looking at our item. $27.3 million is fully guaranteed this year. There's $12.7 million that becomes fully guaranteed February of 2024. They can cut him before that, just like the Raiders cut Derek Carr. If he's healthy, it's guaranteed for injury. If he can't pass a physical, they're stuck. If he's healthy, they can cut him and make it a one-year, $27.3 million deal. Yes, it's a 3-year contract, $105 million. Total value, $28 million. $28 million for 1 year. That's the right number. And they can get away from it if they decide after this year to move on. There is no offset. Some of these guarantees go beyond a year, but there's an offset. So yeah, we still have the guy $12 million guaranteed, but someone else is going to sign him, and we won't have to pay all of that money. That doesn't apply in this case. What else do we have here? What are the chances the Panthers trade away Adam Thielen? That's a question from Anthony James Jones. I have him and am debating making a trade before the deadline. Well, we all care about your fantasy team. I don't know if the Panthers trade him or not. Multi-year deal. I think there'd be a cap hit. It's not like the Vikings need him right now. I mean, you could make the argument that trade him back to Minnesota. I don't know. I hadn't thought about it, but the Panthers, if they lose this week to the Texans and fall to 0-7, why wouldn't you consider guys that aren't part of the future? What can we get for those guys from teams that are looking to add a player that will help them get over the hump? JC Carm, dumb question. Why do some teams wear the captain patches and some don't? It's what the teams decide to do. Aaron Lambert, is Matt LaFleur's seat warming up? Probably not. Maybe next year. We still need to see what Jordan Love can be. He needed playing experience. We don't know how good he's going to be. Yeah, it hasn't been great, but maybe at some point it turns around. Guys get discarded too quickly at quarterback position. He sat on the bench for 3 years, right? 2020, 21, 22. Now he's finally playing. You giving him 1 year as a starter before you cast him aside? I don't think so. I think you got to give him another year, and you got to give LaFleur more time. He's been great as the head coach of the Packers. But great quarterback makes a coach great. Great players make a coach great. And you go from Aaron Rodgers to a guy who's still unproven and try to find his way. All of a sudden, a great coach doesn't look so great. But the other thing about Green Bay, they don't have an owner who can roll out of bed and say, I want to make a change. So I think it gives LaFleur a little bit more of a cushion to try to turn this thing around. David Mitchell, Ron Rivera is dead man walking. Thoughts on firing him now and giving Eric Bieniemy the rest of the year to try to earn it? Need to know now if the next coach is in-house or not. I think at some point that becomes relevant. I just don't know when. I think if they don't make the playoffs, they'll be looking for a new coach next year. There's been some speculation if Bill Belichick is out in New England, maybe that's who Josh Harris tries to hire. How much of the football operation do you want to give to a guy who hasn't really been doing a great job of acquiring talent in recent years? I don't know. Oscar SJW, are the Jaguars moving to London? Probably not. I think they're going to get a deal done to renovate the stadium in Jacksonville. They've got all the leverage they need. They've got another home set up. They don't even have to mention it. Everybody knows. If it doesn't work out in Jacksonville, they'll just move to London. Lee Dale, hello from the UK. With regards to Olympic flag football, why is no one mentioning how NFL players playing is denying the current USA flag football team the chance to win gold? They play for years to win tournaments. Then it gets to the Olympics and it's like, thanks, we'll take over now. I don't know how prevalent the current U.S. Olympic flag football program is, but isn't that what they did with the Dream Team? Isn't that what they do with basketball every year? Isn't that what they do with hockey? The amateurs play, and then when it's time for the Olympics, the pros show up. So I don't think that's an issue. The bigger issue with NFL players, current players playing flag football in the Olympics, injuries, how you pay them if they get injured, and getting owners to agree to allow them to play flag football, knowing that if the player gets injured, I'm not going to have that player for some period of time. And players can get injured playing flag football. It can happen. And when I wrote that last week, somebody was like, oh, you can get injured rolling out of bed. Well, I will submit to you that the act of getting out of bed is somewhat less physically demanding than playing flag football. On the continuum of tackle football and getting out of bed, flag football is closer to tackle football than it is to getting out of bed. Mark, otherwise known as @Skullmark3124. Would the Vikings be interested in Kyler Murray? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think if the Vikings make a move at quarterback, it's going to be for a young guy that Kevin O'Connell believes he can properly tutor and develop and grow into a 10 or 15-year franchise quarterback. But after Monday night, I'm kind of in the camp of, hey, you know what? Kirk's 35. Let's let this thing ride a little bit, because there's a chance it's working now, that he's been there long enough with Kevin O'Connell, that it's all fitting together perfectly. Let's see if that can lead somewhere good.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.